There are those who have traveled far along the path of spiritual practice. They have affirmed, they have prayed, they have visualized with all their faith, and yet the miracle has not appeared. Why is this so? Because between action and manifestation there lies a silence, a pause in which many lose their way. It is within this silence that the spiritual law works in its fullness, but only those who know how to sow rightly, to release rightly, and to live as though they have already received will touch the breakthrough. This journey is not for those who chase empty promises, but for those ready to awaken their inner authority and to recognize that I am is the starting point of all creation, the dilemma of the earnest seeker who has not yet broken through. You may have stepped onto the spiritual path with all your devotion. You have read books on the power of the mind, attended enlightening seminars, and devoted yourself to visualization and affirmation with every ounce of faith you could muster. Day after day, you have kept discipline, remained focused, repeated powerful affirmations, prayed in silence and even in tears. You have done all that was instructed, believing you stood at the very threshold of transformation. And yet, when you look outward, little seems to have changed. Money remains scarce, health unshaken, the relationships unimproved, and a quiet disappointment seeps into the heart. This is the land of contradiction through which many have walked. They have done rightly, even very rightly, and still the breakthrough has not come. Here, patience begins to waver. A small voice whispers within, perhaps this law does not truly work. Perhaps my faith is not strong enough. Perhaps I have done it wrong. That voice is like a shadow, slowly dimming the very light that had been nurtured. The earnest practitioner becomes the doubter of his own path. It is like a gardener who has tended the soil faithfully each day. He has chosen the finest seed, dug the earth with care, watered at the proper hour. Yet when no sprout appears, he grows anxious. He stoops to the soil, digging again and again to see whether the seed has grown. And in that impatience, he kills the tender life struggling to emerge. The same happens in the realm of spirit. One sows seeds in the subconscious, but when results do not appear at once, doubt and worry begin digging them up, destroying the process that was already unfolding in perfection. At this stage lies a truth often overlooked. Not every effort produces breakthrough. There is a point beyond which more labor yields no more result. Indeed, it hinders manifestation. This is where many become trapped. They believe that if they work harder, pray longer, affirm with more force, the result must surely come sooner. Yet the spiritual law does not function by such arithmetic. The seed requires time to sprout. A child requires 9 months to take form in the mother's womb. A creation requires a season of silence in which to crystallize. More pressure, more forcing brings only obstruction. This truth disappoints many, for they have been trained by the world's thought that more effort always reaps more reward. But in the realm of spirit, this no longer holds. There operates a higher principle beyond striving, the principle of release and trust. Yet, at this very point, fear arises. People fear that if they stop, if they cease affirming, if they rest from prayer, everything will vanish. They clutch with trembling hands, not knowing that it is the very grasping that blocks the natural flow. The dilemma of the earnest but unbroken lies here. They have learned the principle, but not the whole law. They know how to sow, but not how to rest. They know how to form the image, but not how to release it and let it bloom. They pray with fervor, but without the quiet confidence of absolute faith. This is not their fault. It is a necessary step in the maturing of the soul. just as a child learning to walk, after mastering the step, must yet learn to let go of the hand and walk alone. If you see yourself in this picture, know that you are not alone. Millions have crossed this twilight land. It is not the mark of failure, but the doorway to deeper understanding. At the very moment you feel that nothing is working, you may be nearer than ever to the opening, but to pass through, your vision must change. You must shift from tense striving to silent trust. When an artist completes a painting, there comes a time to lay the brush aside. Every stroke, every shade has been placed. To add more is to mar the work. So it is in the spiritual life, there comes a moment when you must trust that you have done your part and the rest belongs to the invisible law. That act of release opens the space for the miracle to move. On your journey, you may have planted many seeds in the subconscious. Trust that the soil has received them, and even now nourishes them in secret. Do not imagine that the earth is idle because the sprout is unseen. Let the soul rest, and the divine law will fulfill its work. Then you will see that the problem never lay in lack of effort, but in not allowing life the space to unfold. This first chapter is a mirror for all who have walked long, yet see no result. It reveals the paradox that zeal too great may itself become the barrier, and the solution does not lie in doing more, but in learning to trust, in learning to rest in the peace of the mind, so that the breakthrough may find its way to appear. The space between effort and manifestation, there is an invisible gap between the moment you pour all your strength into sowing the seed and the moment the result appears. This gap is so often misunderstood that countless people give up too quickly or fall into despair just when what they long for is already very near. The world is accustomed to thinking that the more you do, the more you gain, that the harder you push, the sooner you arrive. But the law of spirit does not operate in that way. There comes a point where effort must yield to allowing, where the human will must step aside so that the divine current may move on its own. If you do not recognize this dimension, you become like the farmer who plants his seed but spends his days hovering anxiously over the field, forgetting that the seed can only grow in the quiet of the soil and in the flow of time. In the mind, you have sown the image, you have affirmed, you have prayed. That is your part. But the moment the seed is placed, a mysterious process begins to work at deeper levels, and your task is no longer to strain, but to withdraw in peace and permit life to do its secret work. This is the space between effort and manifestation, where so many stumble, unable to endure the silence. They mistake the silence for failure, when in truth it is the surest sign that what has been planted is being nourished. Ask yourself, have you ever felt anxious after you prayed, affirmed, and visualized so clearly, yet day after day saw no outer change? Have you felt that silence like a wall between you and your desire? Have you ever doubted that perhaps it was all an illusion? If so, you are not alone. Nearly everyone who walks the spiritual path must face this moment. But how you view this gap will decide everything. In the material world, we are used to continuity. Plant today, tend tomorrow, and then reap. But in the spiritual realm, this interval cannot be measured by a calendar on the wall. It may be days, months, or longer, not to test you, but to give the seed its time to germinate in divine order. To intrude, to force, is only to spoil the process. The essence then is not to increase effort, but to learn the art of release and trust. In this silence, the greatest struggle is not in the outer world. But within the soul itself, on one side is the will, demanding control, demanding immediate results. On the other side is the gentle call to let go, to allow the unseen current to move. If you lean toward control, you will exhaust yourself, lose strength, and drain your faith. But if you lean toward release, you will discover a power that does not come from you, but from the source of the universe, and it is here between action and allowing that the miracle begins to rise. This is the paradox all must learn. When you cease forcing the result draws closer. When you stop worrying and simply give thanks, the way opens of itself. Many do not see this and imagine that silence is a dead void. But in truth, it is a womb. Like the child in the mother's body, no one sees its daily growth, yet life is forming surely, and in due season its arrival is inevitable. Real faith is the willingness to walk through those unseen months without doubting. So I ask you now, as you listen, are you willing to let what you have planted in the mind grow in silence? Without demanding signs at once, are you ready to lay down the burden of control and taste the peace of surrender? If your heart whispers yes, then that is the first step across the threshold of breakthrough. And let me pause to thank you for your presence here. Reading these words to the very end proves you are earnest in changing your life. Not everyone journeys this far. The space between effort and manifestation is where people most easily lose hope, but it is also where the greatest treasure is hidden. That treasure is not the outer miracle, but the full capacity to trust. And once you touch that trust, every outer door will align of itself. You will understand then that breakthrough never comes from straining harder, but from stepping into another dimension where you and the universe move as one. In that moment, you will no longer ask when it will come, but you will smile, knowing it has already begun. The principle of addition, not replacement. When one steps onto the spiritual path, there is often the belief that each new teaching cancels out what came before, as though a fresh formula could render the earlier one useless. But the truth is otherwise. Deeper principles never destroy the first steps. They only complete what was lacking, filling in the missing pieces so that the picture becomes whole. If you stop only at the stage of sowing the image, repeating affirmations, and praying with fervor, you have traveled only half the journey. The other half is the art of release and the order of stepping back at the right moment. This is not abandonment, but completion, like the final brushstroke on a canvas, after which the artist must stop and allow the work to speak for itself. Imagine a musician playing a melody. He may strike every note with perfect precision, yet if he does not know when to sustain, when to pause, so that silence may resound, the music will lack soul. Silence does not replace sound, it completes it, making the melody whole. In the realm of spirit, the same is true. Stepping back at the right moment is the silence that allows the invisible power space to work. You have done your part with conscious effort. Now it is the universe's turn to act in stillness. It is vital to understand that release is not a negation, but the deepest affirmation. When you sow and release, you declare that you trust the law, that you believe the process has begun and is sure to be fulfilled. On the other hand, when you keep interfering, you are signaling disbelief that more must be done to guarantee the result. Thus, stepping back is the highest affirmation. I have done my part, and now I trust the order of life. Throughout spiritual history, the masters have emphasized this truth. They never denied the necessity of prayer or affirmation, but they added a principle few notice. The spirit must rest. Even in the Bible, the Sabbath was not only a social decree, but a symbol of spiritual law. 6 days of labor represent effort. The seventh day represents rest, where the work is acknowledged as complete. Without that rest, the work is never whole. An experienced gardener understands the limits of cultivation. Too much water drowns. Too much fertilizer spoils the soil. There are times when the best thing to do is step aside and let the plant grow. Non-interference is what allows natural law to unfold. This is the missing element that makes all the techniques effective. The technique of impressing the mind is not useless, but it lacks power without the art of release. Here we must distinguish clearly between release and giving up. Giving up comes from disappointment and exhaustion. Release comes from faith and fulfillment. The one who gives up says, I quit because I no longer believe in the outcome. But the one who knows release says, I no longer need to do more because I believe the outcome is already formed. The difference lies at the root of consciousness, and it is this difference that gives the principle its strength. If you cling only to half sowing but never stepping back, you will remain trapped in repetition. You will keep doing and redoing, seeking new methods, switching teachers, hoping each time for a magic formula to replace the old, but no formula will replace the essence. What you need is not another tool, but the missing addition, release, so that what has been sown may unfold. Once you grasp this, you will stop searching endlessly and begin to mature in trust. In the art of spiritual healing, Emmet Fox often stressed that every prayer must end in rest. It is like writing a letter. Your task is to write, sign it, and place it in the mail. After that, you walk away. You do not clutch the letter to ensure its delivery. You trust the postal system, and so you let go. The same is true of the spirit. You have written your message in the mind, planted your image in the subconscious. Now is the time to trust and release, so that the law may carry it to its appointed place. And it is in that moment that you will see the profound truth. Release is the piece that completes the whole. It does not erase what you have done. It makes all of it effective. It adds power to your affirmations, breaths to your visions, an invisible hand to your prayers. This is the principle that does not replace the old, but brings it to fulfillment. The moment you truly step back in peace, you will find that silence is no longer frightening. It is like the night needed for the seed to rise, like the pause that makes music art. Then you will understand why years of effort did not yield the result. It was not that you were wrong. It was that you had only traveled half the way. The rest is to let life unfold in its own manner. And that is the meaning of the principle of addition, not replacement. The common mistake, striving becomes interference. The greatest error most seekers make is turning faith into a struggle. The human mind has been trained to control, to believe that if results do not appear, one must do more, push harder, supervise constantly, but the law of spirit operates in the opposite way. The more you dig up the seed, the more surely it dies. The more you interfere, the more the process is destroyed. You may sow the finest seed into the richest soil, but if you lift the earth each day to check whether it has sprouted, you become the very one who kills the tender shoot. This is the mirror of countless spiritual practitioners. They sow the seed and then grow restless, anxious, checking daily, multiplying prayers and affirmations, and yet the result never comes. It is essential to see the difference between two things, clear intention and effortless allowing. Clear intention is your part of the work. It is sowing the image into the mind, affirming with faith, praying with sincerity. But once that is done, you must step into the second phase, effortless allowing, which is release. This is where most stumble. They know how to sow, but not how to release, how to form the image, but not how to let it live on its own. The truth is that once the seed is planted, every act of force becomes interference, and interference always breaks the process. Look to nature for the lesson. The river flows through the valley. It does not strain to find its course. It simply follows the natural slope. The flower opens when its season comes. It does not force its petals before the sun calls them forth. The fledgling learns to fly at the appointed time. Neither sooner nor later, life carries a perfect order that needs no anxious tension to sustain it. Yet man, obsessed with control, believes that without his constant watch and pressure, the result will never appear, and it is this distorted belief that delays or destroys what the law has already set in motion. Many wonder why hundreds of affirmations bring no change. They do not see that every affirmation made from fear plants another seed of doubt. Each one says the opposite of what they long for. I am not sure. I do not yet believe. Instead of strengthening faith, they multiply confusion. This is the essence of striving. It does not spring from certainty, but from lack of trust. It must be clearly understood. Effort is necessary, but only in its place. The stage of sowing demands focus and determination, but after that, if you cling with tension, every act becomes interference. And every interference is like digging into the soil, preventing the seed from rooting. Many never grasp this delicate boundary, and so they spend a lifetime caught between sowing and digging, never reaching the harvest. So I put a question to you who are reading these words. Are you unknowingly destroying the very seeds you have planted? Simply because you cannot endure the silence. Are you checking the process instead of trusting it? Be honest with yourself. And if you recognize yourself here, I ask you to be courageous. Write in the comments, I am ready to change, or simply type the number 1. I want to know that you are truly present, listening, and ready to step into a new way of life. Thank you for daring to admit it and daring to choose change. For this realization itself is half the solution. Striving has never been the key to miracles. The key is always the balance between sowing and releasing, between clear intention and effortless allowing. When you have sown the seed in faith, dare to walk away in peace. Trust that the soil is at work, that life is moving in silence. Let the harvest come in its natural order. Instead of ruining it with impatient interference, then you will discover that the miracle was never absent. It was only waiting for you to step aside, so it could appear in fullness. The law of reversed effort, Troward, Thomas Troward, one of the profound thinkers of spiritual science, uncovered a principle that seems paradoxical at first, yet hides within it the secret of creation. He called it the law of reversed effort. This law declares that every impression, once planted deeply in the subconscious, will inevitably bear fruit if it is released from the grip of conscious tension and control. But the tighter you cling, the farther the result drifts, like trying to chase a butterfly. The more you lunge, the quicker it escapes. But when you sit quietly in the garden, the butterfly may alight upon your hand. That is the perfect picture of the law at work. The subconscious does not respond to your strain. It responds to the depth of your impression. Once an idea has been sown with clear faith, vivid imagery, and genuine emotion, the process has begun. The next step is not to supervise, not to check, not to repeat in anxious compulsion. The next step is to step back, to release, and allow that impression to sink into the deeper soil and work according to its own law. Striving to hold it in the conscious mind only blocks the process, for the conscious habit of control continually sends the opposite signal. I am not yet sure. I still fear it will fail. And that hidden fear distorts the outcome. Look to the seed in nature. The farmer plants once, covers it, and walks away. He does not dig it up daily to check the roots, for he knows that would ruin the process. He plants, he trusts, and he waits. So with your subconscious, a thought planted with certainty, if left in the soil, will root and bring forth fruit. But if you disturb the ground with worry, with constant questioning of why nothing is showing, you will never see the harvest. This is the law of reversed effort. The result comes when you let go and flees when you clutch too tightly. In spiritual life, this explains why some see results from a single prayer or a single act of visioning, while others labor for years without change. The difference is not in the number of repetitions, but in the quality and the attitude. One act of sowing, wholly released, carries invisible power. Thousands of acts done in anxiety and clinging produce only confusion, Troward insisted. This is not a theory, but an objective law. As is act, there's gravity. It works whether you believe or not. The reversal lies here. The human mind assumes that to hold is safety, to control is security, but the spiritual law demands the opposite. Release is the guarantee. Letting go is the true grasp. This is the hardest lesson for seekers to accept, raised as we are in a culture of striving, where doing more measures worth, where control proves responsibility. Yet in the world of spirit, doing less is stronger. Non-interference is cooperation. Recall a time when you tried to remember a forgotten name or word. You strained, you frowned, you dug through memory, but it eluded you. Then you gave up, turned your mind elsewhere, and suddenly the word sprang clear into your mind. That is the living proof of the law. The more you chased, the more it hid. The moment you relaxed, it came. The subconscious works in the same way. Many confuse release with indifference or surrender to defeat, but it is not so. Release in spirit is the highest act of trust. When you have planted, when you have done the conscious work, trust means knowing the process has begun and will surely complete. Release is not laziness, but cooperation with a higher law. You do not need to supervise the sunrise each morning to ensure it happens. You trust and you awaken to it. So too, when you have sown an idea into the subconscious, you need not guard it with fear. You trust and you live as though it is already. So Troward said, this is the dividing line between those who succeed occasionally and those who succeed consistently. The first sows but does not release. The second sows and then lets go. And that reversal makes all the difference. It is like sand in the hand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. But when you open your palm, it rests secure. The power of spirit never flows through strain, but through openness. The law of reversed effort also teaches a deeper lesson about the nature of power. True power is never revealed in panic or compulsion. It manifests in stillness, in grateful faith, in the quiet attitude that lets divine law move unhindered. Those who understand this law no longer ask why results have not come, for they know once planted, the harvest is certain. Once released, the answer is assured. Their only task is to keep the soul at peace while heaven and earth complete their work. When you live by the law of reversed effort, you will taste a strange freedom, no longer obsessed with checking outcomes, no longer exhausted by cycles of anxious striving. You walk lightly, like one who knows the harvest is already ordained, though the field is not yet green, and it is precisely this peace, this trusting release, that provides the atmosphere in which the miracle appears naturally, as though it never had anywhere else to be. This is the gift Troward left to any soul willing to trust the hidden order of the universe. from mechanical repetition to genuine impression. Coué. Émile Coué, a French pharmacist of the early 20th century, saw something that transformed the way humanity understands healing and transformation. He realized that effectiveness does not come from repeating an affirmation hundreds of times, but from the single moment when true belief arises, light, effortless, indéniable. His patients did not need to strain to believe, nor to repeat mechanically like machines. They needed only one instant in which the truth was felt as already inscribed within them. And the process of change would begin. This sounds simple, yet it breaks the habitual pattern of the mind. Human beings are trained to think in terms of accumulation. More repetitions mean more power. More effort means more effect. But in the realm of spirit, quantity is never decisive. What counts is the quality of the impression. A hollow affirmation repeated 1,000 times is only an empty echo. But a single affirmation spoken from the depths of faith and emotion leaves an indelible imprint on the subconscious. The subconscious does not count the number of times you speak. It only receives what is delivered with real emotion and vivid imagery. Every time you repeat merely to cover your anxiety, you are in fact broadcasting doubt. The more you repeat with tension, the more you announce that you do not yet believe. The subconscious hears not your words, but the vibration you send, and that vibration is often fear, lack, and insufficiency. Coué demonstrated that the moment of effective belief is always effortless. You do not need to force yourself to believe the sun will rise tomorrow. You feel it is obvious. When an affirmation enters consciousness with that same quality of self-evidence, it becomes law in your life. From that point forward, manifestation proceeds automatically, needing no further repetition, no more compulsion. Think of the vividness of a dream. You do not repeat words within the dream to make it real. You simply find yourself in it, living it. And the subconscious accepts it as reality. This is how a genuine impression works. It goes straight into the deepest part of you through clarity of image and truth of feeling, bypassing the gates of logic and strain in the spiritual journey. This is the vital shift from mechanical repetition to creating genuine impression. As long as you remain in mechanical repetition, you are like one standing outside the door, knocking endlessly but never entering. When you learn to create impression, you step inside and live there. This is the difference between saying, I believe, and truly knowing that it is so. Effective faith is like a seed planted in fertile soil. It does not require 100 sowings. It requires one planting in the right place. From there, life takes care of the rest. But when you scatter the same seed again and again, you do not multiply the harvest. You only disturb the soil. One act of planting with certainty is worth more than 100 plantings in confusion. Many ask how to create a genuine impression. The answer lies in the union of image, emotion, and gratitude. When you close your eyes and see yourself in the fulfilled state, when you let the feelings of joy, relief, and satisfaction flow as though you are already living it, and when you give thanks because it is done, that is when an impression is engraved. You need not speak many words, for the image and the feeling have already done the work. This explains why the prayers of Jesus were often so brief. Before calling Lazarus forth from the tomb, he did not utter long, elaborate petitions. He simply spoke a word of thanksgiving. That thanksgiving was the proof that in his heart the matter was already complete. That is a genuine impression, and from it the outward manifestation followed inevitably. When you practice, remember that spirituality is not meant to be hard labor. You do not need to count affirmations each day as a duty. What you need is one moment of truly living in what you desire. And that moment is powerful enough to move the whole subconscious. In a silent hall, a single note struck on the right chord is enough to capture every ear. This is the power of voice within, not just a sound to be repeated, like an empty phrase, but a dwelling place to which you return. It is the inner voice, not meant to echo mechanically, but to welcome you home. When you find that resonance in yourself, you no longer need mechanical repetition, for each return is itself an impression of truth upon the subconscious. The difference between repetition and impression is not just technique. It is the transformation of the entire spiritual journey. It takes you from seeking to possessing, from desiring to gratitude, from many words to a silence filled with power. Once you understand this, you will no longer tie yourself with endless phrases. You will know that one wholehearted act of faith is enough to set the universe in motion, and from there you may walk in peace, certain that the seed has been planted in the fertile soil of the subconscious and will bloom in its appointed season. Silence opens the gate of power. Across every great tradition of wisdom, one message echoes through the ages: be still and know. Asterisk. This is not merely a sacred comfort offered to soothe the soul, but an experimental formula, a precise instruction for the final act in spiritual healing. Human beings often mistake success for doing more, praying longer, affirming harder, visualizing in greater detail, but the truth is the opposite. The final act is not to press further, but to stop in peace, like an artist who, upon striking the last note of the music, lets the sound fade into the air. The resonance is the completion of the piece, not more notes added afterward. Silence is the condition in which the subconscious opens when the mind is restless and the heart in turmoil. Affirmations remain noise on the surface, never sinking deep. But when you bring yourself into stillness, like a calm lake without ripple, the image you sow reflects down as upon a mirror. This is why brief affirmations performed in silence carry a power 100 times greater than noisy, hurried repetitions. In silence, man ceases to struggle, and it is precisely in the absence of struggle that truth reveals itself. It is like trying to recall a word on the tip of the tongue. The harder you strain, the more it evades you. But when you let go, it comes at once. Silence opens the gate for intuition and the unseen power to enter. This is not abstraction, but law operating in body and mind. Modern neuroscience confirms that in silence the brain shifts into alpha and theta states, making the subconscious most receptive and creative. Silence is not the absence of sound, but a quality of the soul. You may stand in a crowd and still be silent. You may sit in a quiet room and still be noisy within. True silence is when you lay down the burden of control, when you trust life to unfold in its divine order. In that moment, you will feel a strength rise from within, an energy that does not come from effort, but from union with the law of life. The scriptures do not tell you to pray longer, nor to repeat more. They say, be still and know. Asterisk. To know here is not theoretical knowledge, but a deep recognition that what you seek already exists, already stands complete in the depths of consciousness. When you rest in that knowing, faith is sealed, and what you await begins to express itself in life. Imagine the farmer after sowing seed. He does not run about the field calling for the seed to grow. He does not shout into the soil or command the harvest. Once his part is done, he lets nature do the rest. He sleeps, he rests, he trusts. Silence of the spirit is the same. You have sown the seed through affirmation and vision. Now it is time to withdraw into silence, letting the law operate. It is rest, but the most creative rest of all. People fear silence, mistaking it for emptiness. But spiritual silence is not empty. It is full of life. It is like the womb that shelters the seed, like the night that nurtures the dawn, like the pause in music that makes the melody sing. In that stillness, what you have planted is quietly connecting with the unseen channels of the universe. And one day, it blooms without your knowing how. The essential lesson is to trust silence as an indispensable part of the journey. Many see silence as passive, but it is not. It is the highest cooperation with unseen power. When you press harder, you confess your unbelief that you think you must do it all. When you withdraw in peace, you proclaim your full trust that you have given the work to the law of life. Here you see the difference clearly. One way leads to fatigue, tension, disappointment. The other to relief, serenity, and a result that arrives as naturally as the river finding the sea. Silence is not the end, but the bridge between effort and manifestation. It completes your part and opens the door for the universe to do its own. When you truly grasp this, you cease to waste strength in vain striving. You cease to spoil the process with constant interference. Instead, you learn when to stop, knowing that silence itself is the final act, the strongest affirmation that you have believed. You have sown and you have allowed the seed to grow, and then one day you will discover the wonder. In that silence, you have touched the wellspring of infinite power. You need no further effort, for the source is already yours. You need not press harder, for you are already in the flow. And in the silence, you will know that all you sought was always there, waiting only for you to step into it with peaceful faith, the sign of transition, tranquil gratitude. There is a subtle moment that marks the difference between one who remains trapped in cycles of anxiety and one who has truly stepped into the land of faith. This moment does not arrive with fireworks, nor with dazzling outward evidence, but in something far simpler. The quiet impulse to stop. You no longer feel the need to strain, to add more affirmations, to examine every sign. Instead, a wave of peace begins to spread within you. A deep gratitude arises, and in your heart there resounds a quiet knowing that all is complete, even if nothing has yet changed outwardly. This is the sign of transition, the place where the mind ceases to demand and begins to allow. What is remarkable is how often this sign is overlooked, because people are conditioned to measure progress only by outer results. If money has not yet come, if health has not yet improved, if doors of opportunity remain shut, they assume nothing is happening. Yet in the law of spirit, outer evidence is always the last link in a chain that began long before. If within you there has already come the state of tranquil gratitude, then completion has been formed, and the outward is now only a matter of time. Think back to a time when you were in deep love, when the heart knows that the love is real. You do not demand proof. You do not require evidence. You simply feel grateful for the experience. Spirit works in the same way. When faith has taken root, you no longer need to force the universe, no longer beg for further signs. You live in gratitude as though it is done. And that very attitude is the proof that you have crossed the threshold. Tranquil gratitude is not a passing emotion. It is a state. It does not come from hearing a beautiful phrase and being momentarily stirred, but from a profound shift in consciousness. There, you release the grip on the wheel and let the current carry you. You have sown and the soil has received. You no longer stand guard over the field to demand the crop. In a moment, you trust that it is happening in silence. And it is gratitude that keeps you linked to the outcome. Gratitude is one of the most powerful states a human being can enter, for it is the language of already received. The one who demands is broadcasting lack, but the one who is grateful is broadcasting fullness. When you say thank you in your heart, You declare that what you asked for already exists, and the mind ceases its struggle. This is the moment when the subconscious receives the clearest message, unobscured by the dust of worry. There are those who spend their whole lives in expectation, never touching the sense of completion. They sow the seed but stand over it, asking when it will grow. And in the absence of signs, they despair. But the one who knows how to transition will stop when the sense of enough arises. They give thanks even when nothing is seen. And it is precisely this attitude that unlocks the nearness of what is sought. Call it surrender, if you will, but in truth it is the summit of faith. At such a time, you feel a subtle change in your breath, in your goit, in the way you meet life each day. You no longer rush to prove anything, no longer need to explain to anyone. You walk with the quiet confidence of one who knows, and the wonder is that this very presence begins to attract opportunities, people, and circumstances that mirror the belief within. Tranquil gratitude is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. It adds no further effort to the process, but creates perfect alignment for the universe to act. You have sown, and now you let it grow. You have affirmed, and now you let it become. You have prayed, and now you let the answer appear. What you are practicing is the art of allowing. Allowing is altogether different from indifference. Indifference abandons in disappointment. Allowing opens in trust. In allowing, you do not reject responsibility. You simply assume the right role. Your role is to sow and to believe. The universe's role is to bring the seed to life. When you understand this, you stop demanding in vain. You stop knocking as though heaven has not heard. You know the prayer has been received, and now is the time to rest in gratitude's peace. This moment, the moment when you feel the impulse to stop, when anxiety dissolves and a sense of completion rises, is the inner proof that needs no outer confirmation. If you learn to cherish it, you will no longer rush about seeking signs, because you already possess the greatest sign, the stillness within. And from that stillness, what you await will arrive gently, naturally, as though it had always been there. The sign of transition is not a strange miracle, but the evidence of law in operation. And once you have tasted it, you will recognize the true power, tranquility and gratitude. For in that moment you cease to be a demander and become an inheritor. You cease to live in the energy of lack and begin to live in the energy of fullness. And that is the very gate through which every miracle walks into your life. Quality over quantity, one perfect exposure. There is a simple truth often overlooked. The subconscious does not count the number of times you repeat. It responds only to the depth and force of the impression you plant. People often believe that affirming a phrase hundreds of times a day will make it stronger. Yet, each affirmation lacking belief is only another signal broadcast that you do not truly believe. Instead of strengthening, you unintentionally transmit doubt. Meanwhile, a single fleeting moment filled with genuine emotion, complete conviction, and vivid clarity has the power to carve itself permanently into the subconscious. Picture a photographic plate. You do not need to shine light on it 100 times to get a clear image. You need only one perfect exposure. With the right conditions, the right light, the precise angle, that single exposure is enough for the picture to appear. The subconscious is the same. It does not demand endless repetition. It asks only for one moment of spiritual exposure where feeling and faith unite, where the image you impress carries such life and power that it cannot be denied. In reality, many people repeat affirmations mechanically as if following a rigid ritual. They sit for hours, reciting words over and over, while their hearts remain unmoved and their minds still full of worry. The result, nothing changes. The subconscious is not persuaded by numbers. It listens only to the true frequency of emotion. Each dry repetition is like drawing lines in the air, leaving no trace but one affirmation spoken from the depths of the heart, from the conviction that it is already complete, becomes a command engraved into the subconscious. This explains why some lives are changed by one luminous moment of prayer, while others struggle for years of repetition without progress. The difference lies in the quality of the moment, not the length of the effort. A short prayer flowing from absolute faith is stronger than 1,000 anxious pleas. A few seconds of vivid imagination, bursting with feeling, is more powerful than an hour of cold visualization. Remember, the subconscious is fertile soil. It does not require constant sowing to be convinced. It needs one seed planted firmly enough, vividly enough, truly enough to take root. If you keep scattering in doubt, the soil is only disturbed and nothing grows. Thus, the vital lesson, quality over quantity. Do not turn your spiritual life into a timed contest, counting phrases. Instead, seek the moment of true impression. That moment comes when you release tension and allow yourself to fully step into what you desire. When you not only say the affirmation, but live it, see, feel it in your very flesh. When joy rises as though you already inhabit that reality, when gratitude wells up as though it is already yours, then the impression is the perfect exposure. And one such exposure can ignite the entire process. If you look back at real turning points in your life, you will find they did not come from endless repetition, but from decisive moments, a moment when you saw clearly, believed firmly, and from that day forward, you lived differently. That was when a true impression was sown, and the subconscious began to rearrange everything in line with a new belief. This is also why the prayers of Jesus were so brief. He did not need endless repetition. Standing before the tomb of Lazarus, he spoke only a simple word of thanksgiving, for in him the work was already complete. That was one perfect exposure. The power lay in the total faith, not in the number of words. Those seeking transformation must grasp this principle, lest they exhaust themselves in vain. Stop counting affirmations. Stop forcing yourself to repeat until weary. Instead, devote yourself to creating one living moment where you truly feel your desire fulfilled. A moment so strong that when you leave it, it remains imprinted within as an indelible mark. One perfect exposure has another power. It frees energy. When you stop straining through endless repetitions, you stop draining yourself. One affirmation filled with real feeling leaves you refreshed, alive, full of vitality, because you are no longer fighting yourself. In contrast, repetition without faith leaves you exhausted, like running on a treadmill, burning energy but going nowhere. In the end, remember, the subconscious does not respond to compulsion, but to agreement. And that agreement is not measured by numbers, but by the strength of a single moment. Once you understand this, you will stop chasing quantity and begin to pour your whole soul into creating one perfect exposure. And then you will discover that just one authentic moment is enough to open a current of change that can transform your entire life. The right way to sow: prepare the soil, plant one seed, rest in every creative act. Sequence is decisive. What does a farmer do before sowing seed? He does not rush with handfuls of seed and scatter them across hard, dry ground. He tills, softens, moistens the soil, and only then does he place the seed at the right depth. That preparation gives the seed an environment to take root. Spirit operates in exactly the same way. The right process of sowing in consciousness always follows three unchanging steps. Prepare the soil, plant one seed, and rest. Preparing the soil means preparing the mind. You cannot sow an impression into a mind that is noisy, restless, full of worry. Doing so is like casting seed. On concrete, it will never sprout. That is why the first step in all spiritual treatment is stillness. Take just 5 minutes. Let the body sit, shoulders release, breath slow, thoughts drift away. In those few minutes, you are plowing the ground of consciousness, softening it, moistening it, making it ready for the seed. Many overlook this stage and rush straight to affirmations and visualization. That is a great mistake. Without softened soil, the seed is wasted. Once you feel a wave of peace spreading through you, then sow the seed. To sow is not to hurl 100 words. It is to release one clear, simple, definite affirmation. Speak it with your whole feeling, as though it were an arrow striking deep into the fertile soil of the subconscious. You need not many words, only one, but real. Instead of mechanically repeating, I am healthy countless times, sit still, feel your breath light and easy, sense vitality filling the body, and whisper, I am living in radiant health, asterisk in that moment. The subconscious opens and receives. Here, the strength lies not in the sound, but in the feeling. Words are the vessel, but feeling is the true language of the subconscious. Empty words are noise, felt words are command. This is why a single moment of right concentration can alter an entire life. While years of mechanical repetition change nothing, one complete sowing outweighs 100 scattered in doubt. And immediately after sowing, the most important act is to rest. Rest is not laziness, it is wisdom. The farmer, having sown, does not dig up the seed again. He rests, he trusts. Rest is the declaration of faith. It says, I know I have done my part, and now I give the work to the law of life, asterisk. It is in rest that the seed is permitted to sprout. It is in silence that what was sown is allowed to root. This is where many fail. They cannot rest. They cannot stop. They keep checking, repeating in worry, and by doing so they ruin the process. Remember, the final step, rest, is never passive. It is the most powerful act, for it proves your faith. Only one who truly believes can let go. The doubter never rests, always doing. And the more he does, the more he destroys. Rest is the summit of faith and the gateway through which the universe takes up its part. Practice regularly. This right process will transform your entire experience. No longer exhausted by racing through affirmations, no longer bewildered by counting repetitions. You will have a simple formula. 5 minutes of stillness, one affirmation spoken with true feeling, and complete rest, treated as a sacred ritual where you hand the seed into the keeping of the universe. This is the power of voice within, not just a sound you utter, but a dwelling place you return to, asterisk. The voice you release in the moment of sowing is not a passing sound. It is the doorway to inner power. When you rediscover that voice, you no longer need many words. Each return becomes a planting, and each rest deepens the roots. Fix this image in your mind. A farmer standing before his field, not hurried, not anxious, quietly plowing, placing one seed and walking home in peace. He knows the work is done. The rest belongs not to him, but to the greater order of life. So too, when you know how to prepare the soil, plant rightly, and rest, you are cooperating with the law of creation at its highest level. and then the result will appear naturally, effortlessly, like a harvest that is inevitable once the seed has been placed in good ground. The three core elements of effective treatment. In every spiritual method, it is easy to get lost in details and forget that only three core elements determine success. You do not need hundreds of formulas, nor countless techniques. If these three elements combine rightly, the process is certain. First is the image of accomplishment. Second is the authentic feeling of possession. And third is the faith to release. When these three converge, treatment becomes an arrow flying straight to its mark, unstoppable. The image of accomplishment is the first step. It is not a vague picture of something you hope to attain someday, but a vivid scene of something already complete in your imagination. The door is not waiting to open, it is open. The picture is not a distant prospect, it is a present reality. This stands in sharp contrast to how most practice. They imagine as though striving, as though the result still lies ahead. But the subconscious does not deal in future. It receives only the present. When you sow the image as already finished, the subconscious acts as though it is here. Now, the second element, the authentic feeling of possession, is the soul of the process. Without feeling, the image is a dead picture. But when you step into the scene and live in it, when you feel joy, satisfaction, peace, gratitude as though it were already yours, then the image becomes a living impression. This is no idle fantasy, but a real experience of the mind. The subconscious accepts feeling as undeniable proof. It does not ask for outward evidence, it only needs inward emotion. If you feel it, then to the subconscious, it is real. The third element, faith to release, is the final act. Many do well in the first two. They imagine clearly, they feel deeply, but then they cling, refusing to let go. And that is why nothing moves. They do not trust the law to operate, so they repeat endlessly, check constantly, interfere repeatedly. The result, the seed never roots. Only when you release handing it to the Lord is the process complete. Release is not giving up. It is the bold declaration, I know this is done. Asterisk. You do not demand further. You do not plead again. You trust. And you rest. A vivid example of these three came from a young actor obsessed with repeating affirmations. He would declare dozens of times daily, I will be chosen, I will succeed, asterisk. Yet the more he said it, the more weary and doubtful he became. Each repetition reinforced the sense of not having. But when he changed his approach, everything shifted. He took a few minutes of stillness, then created a vivid picture of signing the contract, standing on stage, hearing the applause. He allowed joy and pride to fill him, then released it. No more endless affirmations. He simply lived as though it were done. Soon, an unexpected opportunity arose, and the role of his dreams appeared exactly as he had seen it. This shows that effective treatment is not a game of quantity, but of harmony. The three elements are like free movements of music. The image is the opening note. The feeling is the melody, and release is the perfect pause that completes the piece. Leave one out, and the song is broken. With all three, the song is whole, resonant, unstoppable. See the deeper spiritual meaning. The image of accomplishment corresponds to the vision of the mind, the authentic feeling to the heart, and the release to the soul, mind, heart, soul in harmony, and what you desire becomes reality. This is the integration of the whole person. And when the whole person agrees, the universe cannot refuse. If you doubt the power of release, recall the words of Jesus before each miracle. He did not beg with long petitions. He gave thanks as though it were already complete. That thanksgiving was the release, the final seal upon the process. He showed that treatment is not about added strain, but about sure faith and rest and peace. These three elements can be seen as the three edges of a key that unlocks the door of creation. The image is the key itself. The feeling is the turning force. And the release is the moment the door swings open. You do not need further complexity. You need only to walk honestly in these three. And once you do, you will see they apply not only to specific desires, but to the whole of life. You will begin to see life as a mirror when within there is image, emotion, and release without will reflect it faithfully. Remember, all effort beyond these three is excess. What you need is not more, but right. The accomplished image, the authentic feeling, the faith to release together, they form the simple yet all-powerful formula for transforming any area of life. And like the young actor, you will find that once you live as though it is, every door opens of itself, thinking times from times instead of times about times the goal. The greatest difference between those trapped in endless longing and those who truly transform life lies in how they operate thought. Most people think times about times what they desire. They think about health, about money, about love, about success, as though these were things beyond reach, seen somewhere ahead. But the law of spirit does not respond to thinking times about. It responds only when you think times from. To think from is to dwell in the state of already having, to begin at the point of being, to start from the consciousness of I am. When you say I am, you no longer stand outside looking in. You are the very center from which all radiates. This is the hardest yet most liberating leap of spirit. For thinking about is the state of lack, while thinking from is the state of being. When you think about prosperity, your mind secretly admits you do not yet have it. But when you think from prosperity, you feel as though it surrounds you, and your whole being begins to live, as though abundance were already yours. Between these two modes of thought lies the difference of an entire life. One is seeking, the other is possessing, one is pleading, the other is affirming. Silent assumption is the wondrous tool for practicing thinking from. It requires no words, no repetition, no display. It requires only presence in the state accomplished. You do not need to affirm aloud that you are healthy. Just sit still and feel life rising in every breath. You do not need to repeat endlessly that you are prosperous. Simply walk with the quiet sense of safety and sufficiency in every choice. This is how the subconscious is shaped not by sound, but by state. When you dwell in the state of already having, all anxiety dissolves. For one who truly has no longer fears loss, and one who truly believes no longer needs to prove. This explains why the calmest souls often produce the greatest results. They do not chase signs. They do not obsess over repetition. They simply live as though what they desire is done. And that state itself draws to them the matching circumstances. Ask yourself now, are you thinking times about times your goal, or thinking times from times it? Are you pleading for a day when it may come, or have you allowed yourself to feel as though it already is? This is the decisive question, for it determines the vibration you send, and that vibration is the signal the universe answers. If you continue thinking about, you will remain outside the threshold. But if you dare step into thinking from, the door opens in the most natural way. What is striking is that this state does not demand explanation to anyone, nor outward display. It is a quiet shift within. You go on with daily work, you walk familiar paths, yet inwardly you are different. You are no longer the seeker, you are the possessor. This is I am, the starting point of all creation. I am is not a promise for the future, it is the affirmation of the present. I am is I am now, I am already from that foundation. Everything else becomes expression. Try it for a day and see the difference. Instead of saying, I will be healthy, sit down, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and feel health streaming. Now, instead of whispering, I will be wealthy, walk with the assurance and sufficiency of one who already has. This is no pretense, but an adjustment of consciousness. And when consciousness adjusts, the subconscious hears and reshapes reality, just as the young actor once shifted from compulsive repetition to one moment of living as though it were already so. So must you abandon the thought of lack and step into the state of being. Then your treatment ceases to be a struggle and becomes a silent affirmation. You no longer speak to the universe of what you want. You simply live in it, and life reflects it. Thinking times, from times, instead of times, about times is the maturity of the spiritual path. It calls you to leave behind the old habit of always looking outward and seeing deficiency. It invites you inward to know that all is already there. This is the crossing from spiritual beggar to spiritual heir. And once you taste this state, you will not wish to return, for within it lies a peace nothing outside can give. So tell me, in what state are you receiving these words? Are you standing outside the door or sitting quietly inside the room of being? Share it, for your presence here is itself proof that you are ready for the shift. I thank you, for only when you are truly present does this message find its full meaning. From here forward, your journey no longer begins in lack, but in being, in I am, in the power already alive within you, inner authority beyond outer judgment. One of the highest principles of spiritual law is this: once the seed is sown, your only task is to rest, you sow, and then you sleep. The seed grows of itself. You do not know how, nor do you need to interfere with the silent process. Releases itself the proof that you possess. If you still cling, still plead, still stand over the field, demanding harvest at once, you are denying that the seed is already in your hands. But when you dare to release, you declare with your whole soul that it is yours, that the process is complete in the unseen. This is why the scriptures remind us again and again, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Asterisk. The weapon here is not only sword of violence, but every verdict, every diagnosis, every statistic, every seemingly solid statement from the outer world. They may threaten, but they do not have ultimate authority. Only your consciousness issues the final decree, and when you choose to stand in faith, you refuse to let any other voice decide your destiny. The farmer does not debate with wind or rain, nor prove to anyone that the seed will grow. He trusts the law of nature. Likewise, the spiritual sower need not argue with circumstances, need not answer critics, need not react to contrary evidence. He knows the seed is planted in the fertile soil of consciousness, and his part now is to sleep. While life does the rest, this inner authority is a strength no outer world can touch. A medical report may declare survival unlikely. A financial statement may say there is no recovery. A relationship may be judged by others as dead. But if you refuse to accept, if you issue another decree in silence, then all these are but opinions, not truth. You have the right to say within, I decide otherwise. Asterisk. and the law responds to that decision. When you grasp this authority, you no longer fear judgment for, that the outer is only a temporary reflection of collective or individual thought. True reality is born from within you. Release then is not passive. It is the affirmation of your power. When you release, you say, I no longer need outward proof, for I already hold inward proof. I no longer plead, for I have already decreed. Remember, true release is the act of one who already possesses. The poor clutch each coin, the wealthy release freely. Knowing the storehouse is full, the lacking grasp, the abundant rest. Release is the natural act of the air. If you truly believe your seed is growing, you sleep instead of worry, and in that sleep, the invisible power performs what you could never do by effort. Inner authority is the throne set within the soul from which you issue the final decree. No law rises higher. For here is the direct link between your consciousness and the source of creation. When you speak one word in faith, the universe begins to rearrange itself to match it. You may not see it at once, but the currents are already flowing, and when the season comes, the sprout will rise from the soil, regardless of what the outer world once proclaimed. Therefore, never let outward judgments cause you to forget inward power. Their words are passing echoes. The decision lies in where you stand in the state. You choose in the faith you hold. If you have sown, then rest. If you have affirmed, then release. If you have decreed, then sit upon your throne and know it is done. This is the supreme art of spirit, where you rise above every judgment and live from the invincible authority within, the culmination of silence, the signal of uncaused peace. There is a subtle yet certain sign that the spiritual seed has sunk deep into the subconscious, the state of uncaused peace. This peace does not arise from good news, nor from outer evidence, nor from changing circumstances. It descends like a gentle veil upon the soul. You may be sitting quietly when suddenly every worry dissolves. You no longer care how, when, or by what means it will happen. You simply feel a deep serenity, as though an important work has already been finished. This is the seal that the subconscious has received the seed, and from that moment your only task is to abide in serenity and guard it from the corrosive force of urgency. Many misunderstand this. When they taste such peace, they begin to doubt, thinking they have given up too soon, that they must do more, affirm more, press harder. Yet that very thought pulls them out of stillness and breaks the process. Uncaused peace is stronger evidence than any outward sign. It is the way the subconscious declares. The command has been imprinted, and no further interference is needed. If you honor it, that peace becomes a refuge, a sanctuary to which you return whenever urgency tries to rise. Urgency is the great enemy of manifestation. It shouts in the mind that time is running out, that if it does not happen quickly, it will be lost, that you must seize tighter control. But such energy only broadcasts lack. It tells the universe, I do not yet have asterisk uncaused peace, broadcast fulfillment. It says, what I sought is already done. Asterisk, between these two frequencies lies a vast difference in results. The one who keeps peace will find things arrive gently. The one who yields to urgency will find the process always out of reach. Here is a truth to etch in memory. You cannot manufacture uncaused peace by willpower. It is not a state you can force. It is the reward of a treatment made whole after you have prepared the mind, impressed a clear image, felt it deeply, and released in trust. Peace comes of itself. It comes like dawn after night, not by your command, but by law. Your work is only to recognize and protect it. To protect peace does not mean to withdraw from life, but to stay awake to the disturbances that would drag you back into worry. When urgency arises, remember, it is not truth. It is only the old habit pulling. Return within. Take a deep breath and let peace cover you once more. Remind yourself that peace itself is the evidence, that nothing more needs forcing. If you hold it, the subconscious continues to nurture the seed until it breaks the surface into reality. In that silence, you will sense a different space, a realm free from the noise of the world, filled with pure presence. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, asterisk. It is the silent voice of peace, not sounding outward, but echoing inward. It needs no words, no proof. Yet when you return to it, you know you are in the right place. Here you are renewed. Here spiritual power ceases to be theory and becomes experience. Many say they want results quickly, but what they need first is to feel uncaused peace. For once peace has arrived, results are. But the next step, when you learn to recognize this sign, you cease to chase evidence. You cease to strain for outer signs. The confirmation is already given, and your task is only to live fully in serenity. Uncaused peace is the culmination of silence. It makes silence no longer a frightening emptiness, but a doorway into new reality. It is the confirmation that you have sown rightly, believed sufficiently, and released at the proper time. From here, what you desire grows as a seed watered by rain, warmed by sun, cradled by earth, until it blossoms into form. If you master the art of recognizing and preserving uncaused peace, urgency will no longer haunt you. You will become one who is serene amidst the storm, and in that serenity, you will see all things find their way to you. Vicarious treatment, borrowing faith when the soul is troubled. There are times when a soul is so surrounded by fear that it cannot hold the image of wholeness. The mind is like a storm-tossed lake. Every affirmation a weak cry, every prayer an echo falling into emptiness. In such moments, the law of spirit does not change, but the one suffering is not quiet enough to plant the seed. This is where vicarious treatment times appears, when a calm mind holds the image of wholeness on behalf of another. Vicarious treatment is not pity, nor the taking on of another's pain. It is not you carrying their suffering. It is you standing in clarity, beholding them from the perspective of wholeness. You do not let your mind merge with their fear, for if you tremble too, you cannot be a support. You choose to stand steady, to keep your consciousness clear, unattached to outcome, and from that place you see them whole, free, well, and at peace. The power of that image lies in its freedom from anxiety. When one is drowning in fear, their mind is shut, unable to receive. But when another with a pure heart holds them in the vision of wholeness, that vibration becomes a mirror for the other's subconscious. This is the deep principle of spiritual connection. The clear consciousness of one can open a path for another. History gives us many examples. Some gravely ill could not pray for themselves, but family or community prayed with calm faith. Miraculously, healing appeared, not because of long petitions, but because someone was clear enough to hold the complete picture when the sufferer had lost it. This is a high form of service, not of outer action, but of inner dedication. The most important rule in vicarious treatment is detachment from results. If you carry urgency or fear for them you have failed for, then you are no longer clear, but only multiplying panic, Instead, you must truly stand in the faith that the image of wholeness is already there. You see them as perfect, and in that vision their subconscious begins to remember its true nature. This form of service is not only for crises, but also for daily life. When a friend is confused, they do not always need long explanations. What they may need most is your serene presence. If you can see them as whole, complete, and steady, and hold that image within, you help them more than any words. Your calm presence becomes the anchor in their storm. At a deeper level, vicarious treatment trains you in a vital quality, the ability to stand apart from collective emotion. When the environment is full of panic, if you merge, you too lose power. But if you remain clear, you become a source of light for the whole atmosphere. This is the spirit of service through consciousness. You do not argue. You do not force, you simply stand in truth. Practicing vicarious treatment also teaches that real power is not in controlling, but in holding the right image, holding clarity, holding faith, and that holding is the greatest gift you can give. For when another is not yet strong enough to believe, you believe for them until they rise and believe for themselves. This is a form of pure spiritual love, asking nothing for itself, demanding no outcome, simply shining as light. In that light, the troubled mind of another begins to settle. And in that peace, they're able to receive the seed for themselves. From there, the process flows as it was meant to. Vicarious treatment does not replace personal responsibility, but it extends a hand when a soul is stumbling. It shows us that service is not only action, but the ability to hold consciousness for oneself and for others. And in a world of turbulence, perhaps this is the greatest gift one human can offer another. Silent affirmation in daily life. Every spiritual process must arrive at this stage. When you stop searching for outer signs and begin to live as though you have received, no longer telling stories of lack, no longer repeating tales of poverty or illness, no longer clinging to the evidence of shortage. For as long as you continue to repeat such things, you are affirming to the subconscious that they are true. Every word, every story, every decision carries a vibration, and that vibration itself is proof of where you stand in consciousness. If you speak of lack, you are sowing lack. If you choose silence before it and act as one already full, you are sowing abundance. Silent affirmation does not mean you must preach your faith to others. On the contrary, it is proven in the small details of daily life. When someone asks about health, you need not recite your ailments. You may answer with quiet assurance, as one who knows the body is in restoration. When someone speaks of financial difficulty, you need not add lament. You may choose gratitude for what you already have. When facing decisions, you act not as one afraid of loss, but as one inwardly secure. This consistency is the strongest affirmation of all. Understand clearly, silent affirmation is not pretense, nor denial of fact, but a choice of where you stand in consciousness. You may see lack in outer circumstances, but you do not let it write your story. You choose to narrate from the point of completion. You choose to speak, act, and decide as one who has received, because you know that as within, so without. When the inner is ripe, the outer naturally aligns. This is not easy, for humanity is trained to lean on appearances, yet this is the final stage of growth, learning to walk by faith rather than sight. And once you hold steady, you will see that your silence resounds louder than explanation. You need not prove, argue, or persuade, for your very energy speaks. That silence is not empty, but brimming with affirmation. It says, I have sown, and I know the harvest comes, Asterisk, it says, I need not prove, for I believe. Asterisk, it says, I no longer live in lack, but move within sufficiency. Asterisk, from this place, every word, every choice, every step becomes a brushstroke painting the story of fullness. Silent affirmation also frees you from the need to constantly repeat your desire. When you truly believe you already have, you no longer talk about it. The truly wealthy do not boast of wealth. The truly healthy do not prove health. They simply live, and life itself is testimony. So too, when you live as one who has received, you become the living witness of the law of spirit. From here, your journey is no longer striving to attain, but maturing in consciousness. Each day is another chance to align, to choose words of faith over complaint, to choose acts of trust over fear, to choose calm over urgency. Each right choice strengthens the seed within and brings the harvest closer. Looking back, you will see that everything you learnt led to this point, to live as though you have received, from preparing the mind, sowing with feeling, releasing in trust, recognizing uncaused peace, even holding the image for another, always pointing to this consistency in daily life. This is the true test, for it lies not in meditation or prayer alone, but in the small choices, the simple words, the daily attitudes. Let this silent affirmation become your natural rhythm. No noise, no display, only steady presence. For when the inner is truly changed, the outer can do nothing but reflect. Then you no longer chase signs. You are the sign. You no longer wait. You are the embodiment. This is the final maturity of consciousness, to become the living reality of what you have believed in silence. Everything you seek is not out there. It is already within you, awaiting your recognition when you learn to sow once with genuine faith, to release in serenity, and to live quietly as one who has received. You will see the world reflect an entirely different reality. Remember, no weapon can prevail against you, for the ultimate power always lies in the consciousness you choose to hold. Walk no longer from the ground of lack, but from the state of being. Then you will not only change outcomes, you will change yourself, becoming the living testimony of spiritual law. And that, indeed, is the greatest miracle